What happens when one of the world's most legendary musicians sits down for what should have been a simple, feel-good conversation, only for everything to spiral into one of the most uncomfortable interviews daytime television has ever seen? What happens when a question meant to inspire ends up cutting too deep? These A Broken Bar is the story of the day Lionel Richie walked off the Kelly Clarkson show. And trust me, ain't nobody saw this coming. Before we get into it, make sure you hit that subscribe button and drop a comment below telling me whose side you're on after hearing what went down, because this one will have you rethinking everything you thought you knew about both of them. The afternoon started like any other taping day at the Kelly Clarkson show. The studio was packed, the crowd buzzing with energy, everyone excited to see one of music's greatest icons. Lionel Richie take a seat across from America's sweetheart, Kelly Clarkson. The plan was simple: talk about Lionel's new tour, celebrate his incredible career, and maybe hear a few fun stories from his days with the Commodores. Just another easy, joyful chat, or so everyone thought. When Kelly walked out on stage, everything looked picture perfect. She smiled that warm, familiar smile, greeted Lionel with a hug, and the audience erupted in applause. For a moment, it was everything fans expected: friendly, light-hearted, wholesome. But the energy shifted quickly. After a few questions about the tour, about his favorite cities, and what it felt like to still be selling out arenas after all these decades, Kelly leaned forward just a little too far. Her tone changed, a soft, but sharper now. "You know, Lionel," she began, "you've had this incredible career, other hits, the legacy, the fans who adore you. But I've always wondered, A Broken Bar, how much of the man we see on stage is the real Lionel Richie, and how much is the image?" The studio fell silent. Even Lionel paused. He smiled that charming, unbothered smile and gave a calm, practiced answer. "Well, Kelly," he said, "after all these years, I've learned there's a public version of me, and then there's the private version. But I've always tried to stay true to who I am." Kelly nodded, but there was a look in her eyes, the kind of look that says, "I'm not done yet." "That's interesting," she said, "because I've been reading up on you and it seems like there's a pattern. You avoid certain topics, certain truths about your past, things that don't fit the image you've built, that romantic, wholesome figure everyone thinks they know." A murmur rippled through the audience. The tension was thick. Lionel's smile faded for just a moment. Then he sat up straighter. "I'm not sure what you're referring to," he said, his tone still even, but firmer now. "I've been pretty open about my life, the good and the bad." Kelly didn't let up. "Have you, though? Because when I look at your interviews, you talk about love in a universal, poetic way, but never in a personal one. You never really open up about your own relationships. Don't your fans deserve to know the real you?" The room froze. Lionel's jaw tightened. His publicist, seated off camera, shifted nervously. But Lionel stayed composed. "Kelly," he said, "my personal life is just that, personal. I share what I feel is appropriate. That doesn't make me fake." Kelly gave a thin smile. "I'm not calling you fake, Lionel. But for someone who's made a career out of singing about love, you seem reluctant to talk about your own. You've been married twice, had very public relationships, A Broken Bar, and yet, whenever it comes up, you shut it down. Why is that?" Lionel's eyes narrowed. "Because my private life isn't a public commodity. I came here to talk about my music, not my marriages." "But don't you think your fans have a right to know who you really are?" Kelly pressed. "They've supported you for decades, don't they deserve honesty?" Lionel's voice dropped an octave. "What exactly are you asking me, Kelly?" And that's when she said it, the question that turned a conversation into a confrontation. "I'm asking about the gap between the man who sings endless love and the man who, according to multiple sources, has a history of being emotionally unavailable. The disconnect between the romantic ideal you sell and the reality of how you've treated women in your life." The crowd gasped. Lionel's expression went from disbelief to visible anger. "Excuse me?" he said, his voice low but sharp. "You're going to sit here and accuse me on your show of mistreating people, based on gossip. Kelly stayed calm. I'm not accusing you, I'm asking you to respond to what's been said. There've been interviews, statements say things that paint a different picture than the one you present. Lionel stood abruptly, his mic almost tearing from his lapel. This is unbelievable. I agreed to this interview to promote my tour, not to be ambushed. Kelly didn't flinch. It's not an ambush, Lionel. It's accountability. Accountability? Lionel snapped. For what? For having boundaries? For not airing every detail of my private life? The audience sat frozen. Some looked uncomfortable. Others couldn't look away. You built your brand on being authentic, Kelly said. But how authentic can you really be when you hide behind that image? Lionel's patience broke. There's a difference between privacy and deceit. You don't have to expose your whole soul to be genuine. You, of all people, should know that. Kelly's smile faltered. What do you mean by that? You've built your career on relatability, Lionel said, but you're selective too. You share what you want, when it benefits you. So what gives you the right to interrogate me about my choices? Kelly's face hardened. The difference is, I don't pretend to be perfect. Lionel's eyes flashed. Neither do I. But you're twisting my career, my songs, into something they're not. When I sing about love, I'm expressing universal emotions. That's art. That's not a confession. Kelly shook her head. But you let people believe it is real. You let them think they're seeing the real you, this gentle, romantic soul. Isn't that misleading? Lionel's voice rose. No. It's storytelling. Do you expect every actor who plays a hero to be heroic in real life? Art isn't autobiography. But your brand is authenticity, Kelly countered. You're not playing a role, you're selling yourself as that person. Lionel leaned forward. And I'm telling you that you have no right to demand that my private pain become your public entertainment. The audience gasped again. Kelly crossed her arms. So you admit there's a difference between the man you are and the man people think you are? Of course there is. Lionel snapped. Everyone has that difference. That's being human. But you're twisting it into proof that I'm a fraud. Kelly's tone softened but only slightly. I'm not saying you're a fraud. I'm saying you're selective with your truth. And in an era that demands honesty, that selectivity matters. Lionel looked around the studio, taking in the audience, the lights, the cameras. You know what the real problem is? He said slowly. The problem is this culture, where privacy is treated like guilt. Where if you don't share everything, people assume you're hiding something. That's the sickness, not my silence. Kelly fired back instantly. Or maybe the problem is that people like you profit from an image, and then hide behind privacy when it's inconvenient. Lionel's jaw set. Accountable to who? Kelly? You? Strangers on the internet? I don't owe the world my heartbreaks. What I owe them is good music, good performances, and respect. Kelly's voice was low, but cutting. That's a convenient philosophy for someone who's built a career singing about vulnerability. It's not convenient, Lionel said. It's called boundaries. And the fact that you can't recognize that says more about you than it does about me. The crowd reacted audibly this time. Kelly's expression turned cold. Don't turn this around on me. Lionel took a breath. Why not? You're the one doing the interrogating. Maybe you should look at your own reflection for a moment. Kelly blinked. Excuse me? You think that because you've had your own hardships, your own heartbreaks, that gives you the right to dissect mine? Lionel said, his tone now laced with both anger and sorrow. But that's not empathy, Kelly. That's projection. Kelly's voice shook. Don't you dare bring my personal life into this. Lionel met her eyes. Why not? You brought mine into it. You think you're asking for truth, but what you're really doing is chasing drama, trying to turn real people's pain into moments that trend online. The audience was dead silent. Kelly's producers were visibly panicking off camera, but neither of them noticed. I'm not chasing drama, Kelly said, her voice trembling slightly now. I'm having an honest conversation. No, Lionel said, an honest conversation comes from respect. This is theater, gotcha journalism pretending to be depth. Kelly opened her mouth to respond, but Lionel raised his hand. You talk about accountability, then be accountable for how you use your platform. You used to be the one fighting against people like this, people who tore others down for entertainment. But now, you're doing the same thing. Only this time, you're the one holding the microphone. Kelly's defenses cracked. I'm not tearing you down. I'm doing my job. Lionel shook his head slowly. Then maybe you need to rethink what that job really means. The silence that followed was suffocating. Kelly's lips parted, but no sound came out. Lionel's publicist had already stepped closer to the stage. Finally, Kelly said quietly, "You're deflecting." Lionel's voice softened, calm but resolute. "No, Kelly, I'm protecting myself. Some questions don't deserve answers, not because there's something to hide, but because the act of asking them already crosses a line." He paused, looking out at the audience, people who had come to see a joyful conversation, now watching a man defend his dignity on live television. "This," he said finally, "is why I keep my personal life private. Because the moment you open up, someone like you turns it into blood for the sharks." Then, without another word, Lionel removed his microphone, placed it gently on the chair, and stood. Kelly tried to stop him. "So that's it? You're just walking away?" Lionel looked back. "I'm walking away because I still respect myself enough to know when a line's been crossed." And then, he walked off stage, leaving Kelly standing there, stunned. The audience torn between applause and disbelief. For a long moment, nobody said anything. The cameras stayed rolling, the crowd whispering, unsure if what they'd just seen was real. Kelly finally turned back to the camera, forced a shaky smile, and said, "We'll be right back." The screen faded to black. But that moment, that exchange, didn't fade at all. Within hours, clips of Lionel's walk-off began circulating online. Fans took sides. Some defended Lionel, saying Kelly had gone too far. Others argued she was right to ask tough questions. And just like that, what began as a simple interview became one of the most talked about moments in daytime television. Maybe it wasn't just about Lionel or Kelly. Maybe it was about something bigger, about how much we expect from the people we idolize, and how little room we leave them to be human. Because at the end of the day, even legends have limits. And that day, Lionel Richie reached his.